Hey, it's Jordan. I am back in Flint, Michigan. We've been here for a few days. If you have been paying attention, I published a story a few days ago that I've been working on for a while. The link to the story is right in the description box for this video, so definitely read the story. It is not for the ADD generation. It's very long, so get in the bath if you have clean water somewhere. Not everyone does, and read it. I think that the nuts and bolts version of what that story is about. Essentially, Flint's water has been declared restored by the governor, has been declared normal by the state, the EPA, based on looking at 34 homes in a city of around 40,000. They relied on records that were written on index cards decades ago to decipher where the lead service lines were in the city of Flint. The EPA mandates, their regulation for water testing mandates you have to test the most at-risk homes for lead, which would be homes that are connected to a lead service line. But nobody really knows where the lead service lines are in Flint. But the EPA-funded scientists, as well as the state of Michigan, they deciphered where they were testing. They were testing homes connected to lead service lines, essentially off of index cards. And that's how we're deciding public policy and public health. Because if you know, the governor shut down the water pods that at first they had like 9 stations around Flint that residents that have been poisoned could go get free water bottle the last few years. Then they cut it down to 4 and now 0. If you remember a few weeks ago, I was doing videos. There was lines wrapped around blocks, people trying to get the last bottles of water before they shut it down. So I'm back here this week because I published this piece, which I believe, and I'm being told by people who read it, clearly shows that there's some real creative math going on to declare the water safe here. Not just here, but this kind of testing is being done all over the country. So Flint is kind of ground zero, but it's a sign of bigger things. I'm here at the home of Jill, who's a Flint resident, her daughter Brittany, and in the middle here is Melissa Mays, who's a resident. She's been all over the country the last few years, kind of an activist, resident, hero. Too many things. And she's met with Congress people. She's met with the EPA. She's met with a whole lot of people. So I am here in this house in particular. So Jill, whose house it is at the end of the couch, she had this growing on her, right around her sink faucet. And tell me about, when did you first find that? It essentially looks like an orange amoeba. With little tentacles coming out of it. Tell me about, when did you first see that? What were you told was? All that.
It was 2 years ago in May, and we were told to flush our pipes. So I would turn the water on in the bathroom. I would turn the water on in the kitchen. I would go on about my business. To use the sink, so our phone, that's not just going to give you a blow-up picture. It had a fin-looking thing that was growing towards the sunlight of my kitchen window. Water Defense did have it tested. It was an amoeba. My daughter came over. I sent her a picture. When she got out of work, she immediately got here. She called the health department, and she immediately called Melissa Mays. Scott Smith from the Water Defense did have it tested. We do have water results here for you. We never heard back from the health department. After it was on Channel 25 News, I was contacted by the EPA, and they would like to make a visit to my home. I said, my home is open, please come in. So that is what grew from the contamination of the pipes coming into this home.
So you started seeing this go, what, around like early 2016?
Yes.
Right, early 2016. So did you call Scott Smith first or MDEQ? Who did you contact about this? I mean, it looks like pretty much an octopus growing out of your... Yeah, who did you contact first?
It looked like foreign, like something you would see growing in the bottom of your aquarium. that you're all like, "Ooh, I need to clean that aquarium." My daughter, when she came, Brittany, you called the health department.
I called the health department, yeah.
Yes.
And I took it to DHS.
Okay. And
does his own testing through the actor Mark Ruffalo. He has a nonprofit that does water testing and other things. So Scott has come in. He's not funded by the EPA, the state, nobody else. So he's come in and did a lot of testing. All right. So Scott, his testing, which by the way goes to a lab the EPA uses. So I mean, it goes to a verified lab. They call it an amoeba. Had 14,000 calcium. 520 copper, 18 parts per billion of lead, 410 of magnesium, 100 of nickel, 830 of phosphorus, and 4,500 of zinc. Unfortunately, Melissa, you're now an expert on all these things because you've been dealing with this. Tell the audience what exactly that stuff means as far as your health.
None of these things are good. High levels of calcium and magnesium can actually cause heart problems. So also, I wanted to let you know that the 18, this is actually not in parts per billion. This is in milligrams. It's 18,000 parts per billion of lead, 520,000 parts per billion of copper, 410,000 parts per billion of magnesium, 14 million parts per billion of calcium, 830,000 parts per billion of phosphorus is what they're using to recoat the pipes, but it also feeds bacteria. Same with nickel and zinc. None of these things should be at any close to this level. The scariest thing that did come out was the actual bacterial testing. It came out to be the bacteria was Delphtia pseudovirens, which is a dangerous human pathogen to people who have compromised immune systems, like people who have been poisoned, like the people of Flint, and it can do serious damage to your heart. So we presented this on the news to everybody with the plumbers, with all the testing present, and crickets.
So thank you for pointing that out because I get things wrong too. So you got 18,000 parts per billion of lead. 15 is the allowed limit for the EPA. I think 18,000 larger than 15. I failed math, but I'm pretty confident of that. But I mean, wow. I mean, also you have zinc. I happen to know is not good for you in high qualities. And you were talking about the bacteria that was found, but when the EPA heard you had gotten your own testing, they came.
yes.
And what did they have to say? Because my understanding is they basically told you, don't worry about it.
I had sent a picture of the amoeba.
Excuse me, what did you actually?
Bart.
It looks like Bart.
Yeah, his Bart Simpson's hair. Brittany named it Bart, and I said, perfect. It does. It looks like Bart. So I had sent a picture of Bart. I said, my door is open. Please come in. He said, well, and he said, when he picked, there was a couple more pictures, one of them here. And he was explaining to me calcium phosphorus. This looks like calcium phosphorus. I don't think this is anything to worry about. Just kept with a conversation of calcium phosphorus. And I said, well, you know what? I don't have a degree in this, but I'm going to have this professionally tested. I want to know what the results are on this, that this is not just a calcium phosphorus buildup. So then he said, well, I'll be back. We'll try and test that. I said, okay. So when they came back, he said, oh, there's not enough there for us to test. Well, there was plenty still on the faucet. And inside the faucet.
I wanna bring up a point. So when you guys were talking, before he tested it, you guys were talking and he was running the water, is that correct?
Yes, before he had turned the he had a couple of little real small bottles. And so there was a woman that came, and she had like a little something she said over here. This was another time that they came and turned on the water, and we're talking and this and that. And so she took her little sample, and the water's running for a little bit, and we're talking. I didn't think anything of it. The water's running as you're talking to me, and then you put the little thing under there. You took your sample.
And Melissa, why is it an issue that they're running the water before putting the sample in to be tested?
When you are testing water for lead or all metals, one of the things that we had busted the state and city on doing early in 2015 was a loophole, a lead and copper rule loophole called PreFlushing, where they run the water first before they sample. Because as you run the water through the pipes, what happens is that it flushes out basically all the bad things. So what can happen is that you get a false low reading for lead and other contaminants. So yeah, that's very bad. So we had that banned. The EPA even recommended that be stopped in summer of 2015. And then we had filed a lawsuit with all of these things and the issues in November and the December of 2015. That actually was made, they removed the pre-flushing instructions from all water testing, and they were no longer supposed to instruct anybody to pre-flush. You're not supposed to run the water before you test for lead, metals, all these other contaminants, because that's not an accurate thing, because you don't run your water for 5, 10, 15 minutes before you fill up a pot of coffee or before you take a drink first thing in the morning. And that's what the testing is supposed to show, how you actually use the water. So I was a little frustrated when I was listening to you say that, as they were coming to test for the bad things growing off of your sink, and he's just letting the water run as, you know, you're talking and pretty much assuring that it's going to be a low result. That's wonderful.
And remind me, you had issues. Didn't you have something around your eye and other, I don't know if you had any other serious issues, but you had some health problems around that time.
I have taken pictures on my phone, and I still have them. I would take a shower, and at times that it would, from here, like your tear duct, and it would swell. I had taken a shower, and we were having a family barbecue the 4th to go. Brittany took me to the clinic. My eyes were so severely swollen, both of them. It had like bruising under my eyes.
So it looked like battered wife.
Yeah, I did. Pictures where you get out of the shower and you're just covered in just the red rash, and it burns. I mean, your skin literally feels like I just took a in acid. It does.
I just want to say too that the biggest thing was when we sent her water off to originally get tested, just like everybody else did, those results came back 0. So had this not grew
0 for what?
0 parts per billion lead. So you'd go on this map thing, it would pop up what your level was at. At that time, it came back 0. I was like, oh, okay, nothing to worry about. Had that not grew on her faucet, who knows where we would be. Had I not met Melissa at a mall, and connected 6 years prior, not everybody has that resource that we were lucky to have. So many people would say, why didn't she just clean it off? Well, if something's rapidly growing on your faucet, you're sick all the time, are you just going to wipe it off, or are you going to wait to see who will come and test this to make sure that it's not from the water? Because at that time, it felt kind of like conspiracy. Like, is this from the water? You know, maybe it's just the soft scrub. Maybe it, so to find out that is truthfully from the bacteria and metal in the water, that's heartbreaking. There's no trust.
I don't know how much you could say, you tell me, but you used to work at the Department of Health and Human Services. So she worked at the State Department of Health and Human Services, which the director right now is on trial for manslaughter related to Legionnaires, and basically the Department of Health and Human Services ignoring major red flags about Legionnaires. Ignoring is a generous word. Anyway, but when you worked there, do you remember anything about like what they instructed residents? How should you be testing? If they knew that what was going on with your mother or other people? Because it seems to me like there was this culture with the Department of Health and Human Services, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, basically anyone publicly funded by the taxpayer, like, we don't see what you're talking about.
Right. And luckily, my department that I did work with, we got water out to people as quick as possible. And I was a work study. So I was told you were to flush your pipes, then you were to put it in the bottle, send it back to a place. It was like over by us where you originally, I can't remember where you were. It was like Dort Highway or something. And then you would get your results on M Live.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think this is important. So all of this, telling them to flush their pipes, which basically means run your water for several minutes before you actually take the sample, all of this happened. So basically, the first time period that they declared, we're meeting EPA regulations, they said, we have met EPA regulations for the amount of lead that is allowed to be in water for 6 months straight. And then it became another 6 months straight. So 2 consecutive. However, what we're learning, and I think I've learned quite a bit today, most of that testing, they were telling residents to flush the pipes, meaning run the water for several minutes before taking it, which automatically gives you a lower lead reading. So I'm just saying, it doesn't take a genius. Why would they be telling residents to run the water? The response that they've been giving, Melissa, what was the response they gave for why they're telling residents to run the water first?
No one.
So basically, I took it away from you because the point is, this testing, I mean, I don't know how many people they've told to run water, but I found out 2 today. They told you to run the water for several minutes, and they told a gentleman that I spoke with this morning, he had almost 12,000 parts per billion in his water. Again, 15 allowable limit. And I'm not going to even that number's a bunch of bullshit anyway, but 15 is the EPA's allowable limit. March 2nd, 2016, for April 13th, 2016, so a month and a week, he's got 15 parts per billion. The only difference between the two, the 15 parts per billion test, he was told by the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, let the water run for several minutes. How do you go from 12,000 parts per billion to 15 in a month? His lead service line wasn't changed. And by the way, they're saying the water is restored here citywide. I tasted it. It tastes like ice. And I didn't taste yours, but Jen, because I have bad sinuses, what does it smell like when you smell their water now?
You can just smell a lot of chemicals. It just smells wrong. It shouldn't, I don't even know how to describe it. It just does not smell right at all.
So you were with Michigan Department of Health and Human Services getting water out to people, but essentially, as far as you know, was there like an active thing where they were talking like, well, we're trying to get lower lead levels, or you weren't at that high level where you would even?
I didn't. There was much concern. I will tell you that. In my department, and in other departments nearby, there were trainings. There were things that we, at the end of the day, no matter if you worked there or not, you're still a human being. People did have compassion. I'm not, I still talk to them. However, there was this hush. So at the time, 2016, Snyder walk in. Oh, he had people that shoot the elevators to go up and have his conferences. He wouldn't associate with the people who were supposed to be working under him. It was a very odd vibe, Another thing that I can't wrap my brain around is how in a 2-week period did the state say that was 0 And then that grows, and then all of a sudden Scott comes. She's lucky enough to get tested through a different source, and it's at 28 parts per?
No, 18,000.
18,000 parts per billion. How does that?
Does it go from and 100%? How did the test results go from 0 to
18,000.
18,000?
The same way that Bernard's went from 12,000 to 15.
Exactly.
But how many?
Divine intervention.
Yes.
Now, how many of those tests that I went personally delivered to families? How many, like, where they weren't able to get Scott Smith, you know? So who?
Flush like they told us to, then put it in the bottle.
But also, interestingly enough, Melissa can comment on this. So part of my story, again, the link, I don't know about on Facebook, but on YouTube, you could read the story. The link is right there. On Facebook, just go to the top of my Twitter. It's pinned on my Twitter, the story. But there's an alarming amount of tests that if you look on the state map, it shows up last tested in like 2016 or early 2017 at 100 above the level. EPA level. So Bernard, the guy I interviewed this morning, you would know about it because YouTube and Facebook are suppressing my content, but that's a different subject. So Bernard, it's at 11,886 parts per billion that was the last time he was tested. However, I went to his house this morning. He's been tested many other times, yet it doesn't say that on the state map. Why isn't the state updating its map? If that's a good question, Melissa.
So what was funny was that, so you were telling me this, and you guys had shown me his more recent test, and I said no, because that's why I found Bernard. Was I looked on the map that it is supposed to automatically populate the test results. It does for mine. It shows the list, the previous tests, and everything like that, and. Maybe it might pop up magically, but none of them are on there. So that's why I was alarmed, because I went through and spent days upon days looking at this map, clicking on the little red dots, because that means over 150 parts per billion. And I would look at the amount and the last time they were tested. And then I sent it off to the attorneys. I sent it off to the researchers. I sent it off to you. And I said, this is really wrong. This, nobody's been back to retest these people. And then all of a sudden, he has these other tests and they're not on there. And so as you're telling me this and showing me this, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. He had almost 8,000 parts per billion, almost 12,000 a month later. And then the month later after that, he's got 15. I said, there has to be some kind of pre-flushing. And sure enough, you called Bernard and he said, yeah, they told me to run the faucet before they took the test. And I'm like, whoa. So then my head blew up, because that was after we had forced the change, and the EPA had even forced the change with the state and city to get rid of pre-flushing, because it's a loophole that's used to cheat. It is a cheat. And so, and obviously a huge cheat. This newer tests show that he's still got over the action level of lead in his bathroom now, even after his lead service line's been changed. So, it goes to show you that.
Today. That does not taste pristine.
No, and the fact of the matter is that people think that if their lead service line gets replaced, mains are still contaminated. And it was so ironic, because they had announced that everything's fine, everything's good, and yet we have mains bursting, because when you run acidic water through a water system, then longer, because now they let you smell into the water to recoat them. It's phosphoric, a keyword, eating all the welds and solder. So we have to your water, but in our situation, filter and then boil the water. So it's like, oh, good God. So there's no way that there's divine intervention. There's no way that it magically goes away. It just doesn't solve itself.
I think what's important here, because I've heard this talking point from some idiots. I don't know who these people are who reach out to me like, why do you keep going back to Flint? There's all these other cities. There's like 3,000 other cities with way worse lead levels. I think the point is here, I don't think we know what the actual lead levels are in Flint, because they've been basically cooking the numbers. And I might have a car follow me later if they're watching. But the truth is, you don't need to be a mathematician. These numbers don't make sense. It doesn't make sense to go from 7,000 to 11 to 12, almost 8,000 to 12,000 down to 15 in 3 months. That does not make sense, especially you're on the same lead service line. There's no variables changing. The only variable is you have to let the water run for a while. And as the residents have said over and over, it's not just lead, but the difference in your test, the EPA's test didn't look for things like chloroform or any of these things, whereas independent testers.
You know, I'm not underestimating the importance of our lead levels, but there is more than lead and copper that is coming into our homes. I mean, in these test results, here is the proof. I mean, chloroform, arsenic, the bacteria level. Bacteria.
And
so,
a lot of carcinogens.
Yes, thank you. The heavy metals. So people are researching, well, I'm taking a shower. Does
I wasn't texting. I was actually looking up your results because I had your email. The amoeba is a back old growth. Her plate count was through the roof. It actually, Lauren's is actually found in the. So when you had said, I thought I'd remember, this is a couple years ago when you were talking about your eye problems, but yeah, I was reading it actually from the labs in my email, and I was just like, oh my God, that's right. So we have that. And the thing is, the only reason that Jill's faucet sprouted this orange thing, and the only reason that we saw it is because the water had eaten away at the gasket at the bottom of her faucet, and so it had a leak, so it was growing out. That's the only reason that she saw it and was able to alert people. So for people leak in their faucet where it's getting out and in your face, how many other people have this growing? And when we did do inside the pipes, inside the faucets. But I will tell you that when the news did go out, when we were posting about this, people started saying, I have that same thing growing in my tub, around my drain, in my shower basin. So the same thing. And people were just like, oh my God, let me get the bleach. And that's what they were doing. They had no idea that something that's dangerous, it's something, because a lot of bacteria, you can inhale through showering, you can absorb through your skin. I mean, it just depends on which one it is. I have different bacteria in my house than you have in your house. So that should say there's no way that the whole Flint system is normalized or back to normal restored, because the bacteria I have in my house, different than yours.
Alyssa, I don't know his name, but there's an EPA-funded scientist who has said there's this, you know, first he said there's no bacteria problem. Then he said there's acceptable levels of bacteria coming in your shower and faucet. Then he said there's certain levels that are okay with chloroform, even though he's not a microbiologist. I don't know where he's getting his information because he has no expertise on bacteria or any of these things. Frankly, from what I'm seeing, I don't even know if he has an expertise in lead, but that's besides the point. So basically, I remember, because I was at this town hall last year where 6 residents got arrested, and basically a resident asked about bacteria. They changed, the public officials on stage just changed the subject. It seems to me like there's been essentially, you can't find what you're not looking for.
That's exactly it. There was an EPA-funded scientist who Smith. I said, please work with him. He's testing for different things. We need to test for bacteria because hundreds of people have died. And unfortunately, we just found out the actual number as best as we can. The prosecution just found out that over an 18-month period, 325 people died from bacterial pneumonia and related illnesses. So that is basically for 18 months, 1 person died every day, Monday through Friday, for 18 straight months. That's not from lead. That is from bacteria. And now we have high miscarriage rates. We have all that stuff, which is horrible. But that's a 400% increase from before the water switch. Yeah, but also it's the state's testing that hit it. So the state is trying to clear themselves, you know, because that's what you do. If I go stab somebody, I'll tell you I'm innocent. I mean, that's what I do. And I'll be the judge and jury. That's how much sense this makes. So, and every time we have begged and asked, I even asked Eden Wells at a community meeting, I said, I have these bacteria. Eden Wells is one of the Governor Snyder's state-appointed doctors, and she is on trial, or she's in pretrial right now for, along with Nick Lyon, who Governor Snyder gives them both a full paycheck of services. So he still is. They both are still at work, getting their large salaries and benefits. Oh, we are. We're paying for their criminal defense fund. We're paying their salaries. We're paying all the wonderful stuff. Well, I had asked Eden Wells. I said, okay, we found Delphia pseudovirens. We found a Pseudomonas strain in my house, a Acinetobacter strain in my house, which, as this person, this EPA-funded scientist had said, yes, there is normal bacteria that goes in water. So what we did was we sent it off to a lab to identify the bacteria, and then sent that off to a toxicologist at NYU Medical School to tell us if it's a pathogen that can harm human beings or not. And so that's where we would get our reports and our information, because yes, there is some harmless bacteria. It's normal. I mean, especially with the pipes breaking and all the ground getting in there and bacteria in the ground. Fine. But we've had E. coli. We've had a lot of people die from Legionnaires. We've had a lot of issues. Plus, we have all these other bacteria. And so we try to see, okay, can it harm me and how? But when we brought these test results and said, can you please test for this? Eden Wells said the only time we test for bacteria is if there's a main break. And then we just test for E. coli. I said, well, wait a second. What? What? And then they test it like the plant. Or one of their they're not testing in the homes. They do not actually go into the homes to test for E. coli. They do not, fecal coliform, by the way, is the technical term, because that sounds lovely, but that's what it is, fecal coliform. They don't go into the homes and test for that. They don't go in the homes and test for anything else. They don't test the hot water. They don't test the showers. So they can continue to tell us there's no bacteria in the water, because we haven't looked. There's nothing wrong with the showers. It's safe to bathe, because we haven't tested. You know, I mean... There's actually, we have, the U.S. has no bathing and showering standards. So they can say, oh, yeah, it's safe to bathe in 100 parts per billion of chloroform, which is what I have coming through my shower. It's not rated. It's not. With total trihalomethanes, which is actually what kicked off the Flint water crisis, which is cancer-causing disinfection byproducts from putting too much chlorine in the water because there's too much bacteria in the water, which is still happening. A lot of headaches, rashes, breathing problems, that kind of thing. Nice bleachy smell. It's not bleach you're smelling. It's a carcinogen. But that aside, you can smell on your toilet. But that aside, they're just pretending like everything's problematic. Also, let me just add that the tap filters that they're passing out reduce, not remove lead, and they don't touch bacteria. In fact, the Wayne State study proved what they've actually known for years, that these tap filters actually can increase bacterial growth. If you look on the box for the zero water pitcher, it says do not use if there is a microbial issue in the water. So that's interesting that they're giving people stuff that can make them even more sick. And they do. They're not meant, these filters, as nice as they are, they're for aesthetics. They are not meant to save lives.
I just want to point out something. If you're watching East Chicago, if you're watching Wilmington, North Carolina, if you're watching Milwaukee, Wisconsin, fill in the blank, water contaminated, lead, arsenic, poroflinatic acids, the PFAS, cancer-causing chemicals. I mean, this is not just the Flint issue, because essentially there's a lot of fuzzy, creative testing and math, frankly, cooking up numbers that is going on all over the country. So it's not just a water issue, it's also a corruption issue, it's a ethics issue, it's a, can you trust your government? And by the way, I hate to break the news, this started before Donald Trump. I know the majority of you watch, I don't like Trump, but I know that are underfunded themselves. When you have agencies that don't have the money to do the testing, that don't have the money to actually fix the problem, what are they going to do? Make it seem like there's not a problem. And I think that's what's going on here, because the Snyder declared the water restored and shut down the pods, what, 2 months ago?
April 6th, because that Monday, they let Nestle take all the water they want for $200 a year. They did this in the same week, mind you. So that was a nice slap in the face.
The thing is, forget EPA common sense for a second. They're shutting down water pods for city by the number 45%. I factor in under stuff like 8 don't have public transportation here. Right. So you're shutting down water people to basically drink the tap water either from a filter, a tap, and all you have to do is in here for 4 days. Every single place you go, you either drink the water or smell the water. It smells and tastes bad. So how can you say the water is safe or restored and then make public policy decisions I mean, there's a thing called the smell test, the taste, and the eye test, and it doesn't seem restored. And like I said, whether it's Marc Edwards, who very, very small sample size, his testing was literally depending on records that were off of index cards, or the state of Michigan, who they chose the homes they were going to be testing, where, the zip codes, and from what I've heard from many people in the know, they didn't exactly go around testing the worst affected areas. Can you kind of talk about that?
So the Virginia Tech testing was never meant to be a lead and copper rule. So I was actually part of the team that built that out. There was actually a lot of us. I know you hear about one or two people. There was a large group of us that sat in a church basement and built this plan out. What we did the Virginia Tech testing for was to prove that it was a widespread lead issue, because they kept trying to say it was just in one home or just in one little area that's old. It was just their pipes. So we plotted these tests out evenly amongst each ward and zip code. We made sure there was an even amount of number of tests in each one. We went knocking on doors and got this done. We had 277 tests. 277 tests in about a 2.5-week period. And we taught them how to do it. We tested for them, and got spread. It found out that some of the highest lead levels that came back from that test were in 48503 that I live in, and 48504. Well, then when Dr. Mona got these test results, she compared it to the blood lead levels in children that are under the age of 6 and on Medicaid, because that's the records that they had, and which is not thorough and does not mean anything, except for the fact that the spikes, the highest spikes, were in 48503 and 48504. And if you look at the map that Jordan and I have peeled over, there's not a lot of tests in 48503 and 48504, especially not a lot of retests that have been done. So it's that whole avoiding the worst case scenario areas. And for some reason, they keep trying to say that the only place where lead pipes exist are on the inside of the city. And so that's when I started looking at the map to prove that's not where the highest lead tests are. And yeah.
So that would be like a fire department. There's 2 buildings on fire, and they go to the 7-Eleven around the corner with some sage burning. Yes. Because you're talking about 2 zip codes with the highest blood lead levels in children.
In conjunction with the highest water lead tests.
In conjunction with the highest water level testing, and they barely tested there. Also, the state testing is the Sentinel testing, which basically they chose the addresses. Did they choose the addresses based on the highest lead levels? How did they choose the addresses?
They chose the addresses. It was supposed to be on the index cards stating what service line material it was. And they didn't just pick lead service lines, because Vicky Mark's home has a copper service line, and her house was a Sentinel home. And there's other people that don't have lead or galvanized pipes, and they're in the Sentinel testing, but it was hand-picked. And we'll just say we heard from some of the people, the Sentinel testing was a lot larger, like how the Virginia Tech test started off 277 homes and end up shrinking down to like 100. Interestingly enough, some people were moved from the testing. Same thing happened with the Sentinel testing. It used to be a lot more, and then it shrunk down over time, and which I think, if they're just trying to establish some kind of ebb and flow, kind of doesn't work if you don't have the same number of samples with the same number of pipes. But yeah, homes like mine are one of 11 to 13,000.
Working off index cards from decades ago. Again, a lot. And 15,000 homes were stopped about 19 years. In my story, basically saying, and I'm paraphrasing, yeah, I do, about whether this is I do wonder whether our mapping is representative, because we're missing so much information. Once again, I'm not attacking him. His name's Marty Kaufman. He did the best he could with the available resources. But how in the world could Virginia Tech, their EPA-funded scientist, or the state of Michigan be testing homes, those records? The only way you could actually verify whether you're testing homes that are connected to lead service lines, once again, lead service lines would cause the most risk for lead leaching into the water, is if you send plumbers in. And, you know, the EPA-funded scientist in my story is quoted as saying, well, the EPA doesn't mandate. Well, I'm not mandated if I see somebody, like, you know, about to jump off a bridge to stop him or her from jumping off the bridge. But it kind of makes sense to do that if you're a sane, empathetic person. But I'm hearing that, well, we're not mandated to verify what the service lines are. He's on the record in my story basically saying, I don't have the exact quote, but I'm paraphrasing, we don't know for sure. That's a problem with the lead and copper rule. We deal with imperfect records. Well, tell people who have been poisoned, you're basically just guessing if their homes have lead service lines. And how bad is this guessing game? As of May of last year, I don't know what the number is now, but as of May of last year, when thinking they were going to find a lead service line, these are the crews that are replacing the lead service line citywide, they found copper. So last week, it came out that there's now 14,000 lead pipes under the ground, the damaged lead service lines, and that's 15% more than they thought. And I'm sure in 3 months, they're going to find, a whole treasure trove more. Jill, what do you think, just as a resident? I hear the narrative when I listen to the local media is like the residents don't trust the state, and why should they? But the local media here isn't even looking into everything we're talking about. They're just talking about it's hard for the residents to trust the government. Well, yeah, when you are actively tasting your water or smelling your water or showering in your water and you're having problems.
You want to ask the residents, do you trust? Well, it's very hard to trust when the water, I trusted you when I had my water tested. You told me your water's fine. Your water's healthy. There's no problem. As my daughter said, if that would not have grown in my home, how much would I have been congesting? Because this is in our pipes. I'm not only in this for what happened in my home. Res is a city. You know what? We don't have the same blood, but we all have become related. We're a very big family. This sickens me that, okay.
It's not just the psychology, how can I trust you? How can you trust them? I mean, taste your water now.
Thank you.
Taste your water now.
Sense.
Right.
It's common sense. We turn our water on. It burns your eyes. You have family in from out of town, and they
Easter.
at Easter. This year, we had a family dinner here, and if I would not have recycled it, you would not have believed the bottled water that was used to cook. One of the family members needed to use the restroom, turned the water on to wash their hands, said, "Oh my God, what is that smell in there?" I flushed the toilet. My eyes are burning. My daughter, who knows we don't use the water, you turned it on. She was sick.
Wait. Did your family from that?
Yes, through. And when she was here at Easter, because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't have a lot of events at my home because of this. And she said, when I went in and I turned that faucet on, she said, not only did my eyes tear because of this horrific smell, she said it made me sick with the residents and what they're doing to my family. She said, I grew up in Flint, and how dare you just continue to let this go on?
I just want to say, if this was a Royal Oak, a Ferndale, a nicer area, I do not for a minute believe that this would have happened or went on. If it would have came out that their pipes would have been banned, boom, it would have been. But it's, I just, they don't believe in us.
This Trump Plaza, that block, the National Guard would have been in overnight, and it would have been fixed, I'd say, in 2 weeks.
Because Snyder,
Well,
up there, they're getting new infrastructure.
so at the Capitol, actually, the Capitol building, I showed Brittany when we went last week, that it's undergoing this whole reconstruction. They're getting all brand new plumbing. in the Capitol building in Lansing. Also, I would like to add that before...
It's like internal security after the baseball shooting.
Right.
Everybody else is sitting.
Yeah, on your own. Right. And also, I want to also point out in D.C., the Cannon building tested high for lead. All their water is shut off. They're getting all new pipes, and they have an endless supply of bottled water. Just pointing that out. And to go with what you're saying, Grand Rapids is replacing all of their lead service lines. And right after we had settled... without a problem. After we had settled, we were going through the lawsuit pipes room. Before it got settled, Ann Arbor, where Governor Snyder lives, they had 100 lead goosenecks, not even full pipes, just the goosenecks, the attachments, still in the ground. They found them in their records because they have accurate records. We don't. But they found them like, oh my God, replaced all of them. Did they have a lead problem? No. Did they? No. But they got those suckers out before we got our lead pipes out. And we had to sue to get it done.
And can I just ask, I mean, I'll go down the line, but the governor told the mayor recently, get over it. I'm tired of talking about this. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, yes. John. I have a comment. I will get over it when you accept an invitation. I have a beautiful home. Please spend your summer vacation here. Shower in the water. I'll cook for you. I'll make coffee.
And I asked for Snyder rep. And I got to lose. I know. Like that, if you are a concerned Flint resident calling to say you get lectured that was taken out of context and that this Trump era fake news type of, come on.
So basically they're saying the mayor lied about what he said?
Yeah. Yeah. Even though I just watched the video. Yeah.
There.
Yeah. And they pause.
And he would have a big long pause and you'd go, are you still there? He goes, I didn't know you were talking to me. I'm asking you about get over it.
Yeah.
Who am I talking to?
Like, hello. Yeah, they're fun.
Trust.
By the way, share the video. I should have said this 15 times, but make sure you're sharing and all that stuff.
Trust is earned, and how you don't earn trust is one, cooking the numbers, lying to people, telling them that their experiences don't exist. Like those rashes are all in your head. Marla Garland is a lady who's gotten upset. She actually went to the release of a documentary and asked about bacteria. She actually asked Dr. Edwards on stage, the lights and the mic off on her, but that's fine. And she went to see, because she's got rashes, she has to bathe out of town. But they told her it's all in her head, that she's making it all up. The rashes that appear on your skin, you take photos of. Apparently our minds are that fantastic. Maybe the lead made them special. But how you do not is exactly what the state Hurley doctors tried to pull this week, saying, oh, you're not poisoned, you're just exposed. Like we had, and I said, oh, I saw that. I'm exposed to lead. No, it's a poison. You put it in my body. We're poisoned. Thank you. But trying to downplay it. The constant downplaying of our poisoning and the constant lying, and the same people who poisoned us are in charge of our recovery, which is why we don't have one. They're the ones saying that it's all okay.
Well, somebody at a town hall I did, I won't mention her name because she thinks bad things about me that aren't true. But anyway, she said it's kind of like, you know, what did she say? It's kind of like your rapist. It kind of is like the state, the one who poisoned you. MDEQ is the one that didn't add the corrosion chemicals that caused the lead to leach off, yet they're doing the testing.
That they falsified.
Right. And by the way, we're not even talking about the $180 million that Congress passed to go to Flint, which somehow got reduced to 100 million, and now you tell me it's kind of gotten reduced to 40, and now I'm hearing it went to certain charities, but has the relief money been distributed to all the peeps?
No, and we're supposed to have some kind of water bill assistance, so we don't have shutoffs in mass quantity. But we have 5,800 residents that just received a letter saying that they're going to lose their homes because they can't afford to pay their water bills, and all the hundreds of people with their water shut off.
What about what we worked on, where people went homeless over there?
Right. Yeah, so that was one thing that we did work together to get people rehomed, because after their water was commercial buildings, essentially. And so there were dozens upon dozens of people living in public housing that are now homeless because of water. They're poisoning gums. So that's happening to residents now too, 5,800 of them. And by the way, here's a couple of things that irritate me to no end. Number one is saying, well, we have higher lead levels than Flint. First of all, the highest lead level that I am aware of that showed up in the testing was 22,900 parts per billion. That has never existed anywhere, has never happened anywhere. In my home, the highest lead level we got was 1,740 parts per billion, and we were a low one. So don't say that. Second of all, because also there's no crown for the crappiest water. Second of all, when it comes, and also, who knows if they're lying more on our, right, okay, how many people have died? Also, lead's not the only issue in our water, but it's a big one, and it's one that should join all of these seas because everybody has pipes that can be releasing lead and all this wonderful stuff. So you should get your water tested, and hopefully they're not cheating on your water like tests that like they are on ours. And then also, let's just remind you, and the thing that bothers me the most is that we didn't do this to ourselves. This was done to us. Choices were made to switch our water to a much more corrosive, contaminated water source. Choices were made not to treat it. Choices were made to deny our experiences as we're out there protesting, marching, doing our own testing, and yelling and screaming for help and for somebody to stop poisoning us. And they downplayed it. They spent the money and the effort to downplay it and to lie instead of actually fixing the problem. Then they denied us clean water because of money. Also, there are people that say, well, if y'all had paid your water bills, this wouldn't happen. If we hadn't paid our water bills, our water would have been shut off and we wouldn't have been poisoned. So bite me. Also, on top of it all, we pay the highest rates in the United States, 8 times the national average for water that is poisoning us, in a city that is 45% at or below the poverty line from what we know. And my water bill, I have to pay $350 a month or more for my water not to be shut off, for my poison to not be shut off. So
But you should just move.
I should just move.
You should just move out of Flint because it's so easy.
Let me just start this response with you're welcome, because if we get up and move, it's going to be the guidebook on how to get rid of and empty a poor minority city so it can be gentrified. So you're welcome that we're not moving, we're staying and fighting, getting laws changed to protect you. You're welcome.
And it would, I would be derelict in my duty. I should point out, just dumb luck this week when I wrote this story, which, by the way, if you haven't read it, it's for 6 months.
Fantastic.
Basically, it's not personal. Like, I didn't say anything about Dr. Marc Edwards personally. And trust me, I have a lot of it on a follow-up about him personally. We'll see. Anyway, I look at his testing, but this week there was there's basically a complaint that has been issued by Flint against Dr. Marc Edwards. Again, he's the Virginia Tech scientist. He was kind of first credited with like exposing the lead problem here. I don't know if he exposed it or was told by Flint residents there were a problem. But anyway, there's between 30, I think 40 signed on to this. Not much media attention, but there's a website for it. You're one of the residents that signed on. Can you kind of talk about what is the complaint against him, other than the numbers, which we've spoken about?
Right. Actually, all 3 of us have signed on to the letter. The letter basically talks about how, number one, if you look at the Jimenez principles of organizing, you got to let the residents speak for themselves. Let the affected people speak for themselves. And Edwards has basically snagged our voice. So whenever you hear there's an issue with Flint, the media, everybody goes straight to him, who doesn't live in Flint, never lived here, and he answers it, whether it's something he's an expert in or not, like microbiology, or last week when the Hurley Letter came out about, exposed versus poisoned, he actually took stance on it and actually stood against our chief health officer and Dr. Mona Hanatisha, the pediatrician who helped us expose the blood levels. So
not only did he take stance for that, but didn't he go on the stand advocating for certain people?
Yes, so after we had brought him in, it was our group that brought Dr. Edwards in 2015 to help us validate what we had been already saying for 7 months, that there was lead in the water because of testing that was done actually through the sea, and that there were problems with the water. He came in because he's got a PhD and he's got his experience and stuff in lead and corrosion. So yes, awesome. He did that, but he then went and testified on the behalf of Nick Lyon and Eden Wells, who are facing the involuntary manslaughter charges for covering up the Legionnaires' outbreak and the people that have died by the hundreds. So he took their side for them, not against them. And so that was kind of crushing, you know.
And who, Nick Lyon and Eden Wells are paid by the state.
The state.
Correct? And Marc Edwards went to testify for them.
On behalf of the state, yes. Yes, saying that they did no wrong, but people are dead. So, you know, that's fine.
Marc Edwards has gotten a lot, outside of the EPA, he's gotten a lot of grants from private foundations in the state, correct?
And actually in Flint. In Flint, where we could use grant money for paying water bills, replacing water heaters, replacing interior plumbing that the laws don't cover and no one's touching. But yet, you know, you can get a service line replaced, but the only reason we got that is because the law covers it. Then you've got this service line, brand new clean straw, but your interior plumbing is destroyed. So it's just going to be a mess all over. So we could use that grant money that he received from, you know, the different foundations here in Flint and the state to, instead of doing this lead testing that 34 homes saying that the water is safe and fine without properly identifying service lines, we could actually use that money to actually help the Flint residents recover or make their homes less of a chemical bomb and less dangerous. And but instead, he's getting the grant money and doing that. And so we're sitting here going, okay, well, we got nothing. We're losing this, we're losing that. People are getting their water shut off. People are losing their homes. Their homes, like mine, are falling apart, caving in. And so it's hard because we are supposed to be getting recovery dollars and help for this being done to us. And instead, it's going to somebody who is then now dismissing. And the minute that you, another complaint is that in the letter is that if you ask questions or if you disagree with Professor Edwards, he will attack you, put you in his presentations.
Trust me, I know.
You know personally, and I know personally, and senior citizens in Flint know this as well, that if you argue with him, you will be attacked. And so you got to be ready for that. But that's also in the complaint.
So let's just call it what it is. I don't beat around the bush. So in November, there was a pretty awful accusation against me. I've explained it 500 times, so I'm not going to explain it again, but it was false. Thankfully, the majority of people know it was false. So it came to my attention that Edwards was giving presentation on, you know, his Flint testing. God bless you. You're going around winning awards and giving presentations. That's great. But he was, during his presentation, showing like videos that he was taking little from done, not like to essentially, because I don't remember the context. He basically chopped it up to make me look like I was stupid. And he's also basically assaulted women and that I've done all these things. The point, right, sources that people are using to say it is safe. But the complaint the residents have made, I think there's got to be some validity to it, because not only have I read text messages he has sent residents that are like, it's almost like an ex-boyfriend, you know, attacking the girlfriend. I've read emails where, I'm not going to mention who, but he essentially attacked somebody who was grieving for a child they lost. I have read many emails like this, and I know that he is trying to shut down residents speaking up from taking. He could attack me all he wants. I don't care. I know who I am. But when you're attacking poisoned people who just want the truth, they just want to know their water's safe. Because, by the way, like Jill right now is healthy, I think, for the most part. For the most part. But the full effects of lead, and other things don't show up right away, particularly in children. It could take a decade.
From 2014 to 2016, my son had seizures, like you wouldn't believe. He was, let's see, from 4 to 6, it was continuous. And it was a kind of seizure that is not, It's Paniatopolis, so not like a grand mole, you would say, you know, a very rare thing. I don't have confirmation that it's from the water. However,
family history of that?
no. I've never, and it's very rare. So all of a sudden, when you were talking about 48503, that's where we lived during the water switch. However, because I left about 9 months into the switch, I never got water tested there. You will never know. And there's going to be a lot of people out there who don't know what is going on. I had to get a partial hysterectomy at 27 years old. I
met someone in East Chicago, Indiana, who moved into basically a government housing complex that they built on top of a lead plant, who had a full hysterectomy at 29.
Yeah. So when I look at the full picture, especially with my son, because he does have elevated lead levels, I'll never know if it's from here. I will never know if it's from having Flint service lead lines for just that short amount of time. However, we've spent our past 3-4 years continuously on him because his behavior is off. These seizures are odd. These aren't seizures that just last, 5 minutes call. These last an hour to 3 hours. And then there's a 12-hour period in between. And it's hard because when you're thinking about all this, as we're sitting here talking, even though this has been 4 years, I'm just like, my God, just finding out. I had no idea that 48503 was like, and you just, this is real life. If you lived in Flint and you just keep thinking about, shit, there's so much.
But also, how many people got test results that said non-detect or under, or that's, under the allowable limit, that they have health problems, but like they're under the assumption, well, it's not from the water because...
Right, it's not from the water. I only ate, this is what I think with the Hurley piece that really drives me nuts, because they say, oh, Flint residents were exposed. No, Flint was poisoned and Genesee County was exposed. If you go and I may not have the Flint lines now.
Large. We don't know, and that's just not for the Flint residents, but those, as Brittany has said, Genesee County. Coming through. It's not coming into your home, but it was going into the restaurants that you were choosing.
So one of the reasons that I can't speak for everybody. One of the reasons that I signed on to the complaint letter, asking for an investigation into the behavior, into the downplaying, into the silencing of residents, is because obviously we all have questions. None of us know what all we've been exposed to, how bad, what's loaded in our body, because no one's done a body load test, toenail testing, hair testing, any of that stuff.
Sorry to interrupt you, but could you just tell them what your kids have been going through?
Oh, God.
So
I have 3 sons, and apparently they don't count because they were not under the age of 6 when this happened. So that's all they seem to focus on, and I get it. The only reason that happens is because no research has been done on kids over the age of 6 on what lead does to their bodies. So my sons, my 19-year-old son, he has to see an endocrinologist, and there is something wrong with his endocrine system, and they can't figure it out. They don't understand why his thyroid is all jacked up, and then his insulin's up, then down, his sugar is fine. They cannot figure this out, so they run him through testing. He's on medication at 19 that he's going to be on for the rest of his life.
Any family history of thyroid or anything?
No. And he never had any problems beforehand. And also he, like me, has had his teeth falling out of his head. He has cavities on the smooth sides of his teeth, which is odd because typically it's on the ridgy sides where bacteria can get trapped. But lead, along the other metals, gets stored in your teeth, bones, brains. Copper gets stored in your reproductive organs if you're a woman. And it replaces the calcium, because calcium and lead are very similar in makeup, and calcium is a little heavier, so lead's easier for your body to absorb. So guess what happens? So if you're losing calcium and everything, your teeth get weakened from the inside out. And as Jordan well knows, has talked to me through 13 of my cavities, 2 teeth being pulled, emergency. Root canals where my teeth have actually cracked during the actual root canal and had to be pulled as of last week. I was on the phone with you. So
Good dentist.
I have a very good dentist, a very, very good dentist. And on top of it,
I'm sorry, I've never seen you drink pop either. And
Oh.
I just find that, like people say,
yeah, that sugar does it.
She must be. No, I've never.
No.
That was one of my
No.
questions when I
What did I do wrong?
when I
So,
go to the emergency room and my face was out like this.
right.
You have an abscess tooth, and then you go for your checkup, and it's like,
Yeah,
you have
you
this
don't-
wrong,
you
this
never-
wrong, this wrong, and I'm like, wait, from
I'm fine.
proper dental care, I am 50 years old. I never had a cavity or a filling, but now all my teeth are no good.
Well, I had to go to
How does that
Mexico. I don't have dental insurance. I don't have insurance. So I had to go to Mexico to get 3 of my fillings done because I couldn't afford it and they were falling out of my head. So
Just want to emphasize that a Flint resident who is poisoned because they're not getting coverage from the United States, no Medicare for all, some Medicaid, she's got to drive to Mexico. Michigan, Mexico, very far.
very long, hot drive. Actually, because I went with another resident, Sam Juana Olivares, who is from Mexico and speaks Spanish. Thank goodness, because I don't, unfortunately. I know how to order food. I can do that. But she had 16 cavities. I'm at 13, so we had to go to Mexico to go get our teeth fixed. And my sons are going to be up next. But then I have 2 of my sons that my 2 younger sons are 13 and 15. When you're, their osteopath told me that between the ages of 9 and 14, your growth plates, which are from basically your neck all the way down to your feet, are open and spongy. So as you have these ridiculously expensive bone growth, like juts, your muscles and your joints can stretch along with it. Well, guess what? Lead and other metals and contaminants get stored in those open and spongy growth plates and cause them to close prematurely. My sons both have Sever's disease, just the 2 younger ones who are in that window, and they've had to go through physical therapy to have their muscles and joints stretched out for them, which is very painful. And my middle child, and soon to be my youngest, just had to see a podiatrist and have $400 prosthetics put in his shoes to help keep his feet from collapsing as he's standing there. Who he has just hit about 6'1", and tall little skinny kid, hunched over like an old man, and had to quit playing basketball and all the fun things because it hurts him too much. Can't sleep at night because he is in pain. And the same thing with his younger brother, who's trying to run track and in a ton of pain. And also he's like, Mom, I get too tired. He said, is it because I'm poisoned? Because I know, he was like, I work really hard. And I told him, we don't know. So the whole part about this, and that's just a few of the problems that they've had. They have no white blood cell count either. Their bone marrow is damaged and they're not making enough white blood cell count. So their immune system is shot. So they get sick all the time. So we have questions. So all we want are answers. We just want to test our water to say what's in my water so I can walk it into my doctor and say, this is what I'm being exposed to. Please help me. And please contribute these things to water-related issues or not water-related so I know what's going on. So when something's wrong with me, I don't say, is it the water? Is it in my head? What is going on here? But what's been happening is that when we ask questions, we bring in other people, other researchers, and they get attacked. So this is why I signed that complaint letter. Everybody has their own reasons. Mine is because the people like Dr. Laura Sullivan, Dr. Sean McElmary, who worked on FATCHEP, Dr. Reynolds, who went to look to see what's going on with the filters and what's going on with the Legionella and Legionnaire's study to find out answers for us, not for themselves, not to become heroes, not to get grant money, not to do anything else. Scott Smith coming in to tell me what's going on with my water. What can I expect for my kids down the line? How damaged are we? I just want answers so that way I can go to my doctor and get treated for what I'm being exposed to, or buy the right type of filtration system or filter that's actually going to protect my family. I have questions. Instead, what we get from scientists like Dr. Edwards is attacked. I'm in that presentation like you are, getting attacked for asking questions. And it's cute that I want to look into science, but I am completely out of I don't know what I'm talking about. This.
Resident A.
I'm Resident A, by the way. I don't have a name. So finding out the fact that we're traumatized, but we're not just saying, screw it all, burn it down. We are asking questions so we can make our way through this, so we can recover. We are trying to become educated, and we are trying to talk to experts who can help us through. But instead, apparently there can be only one expert who then turns and attacks in ridiculously embarrassing fashion these people that have volunteered their time and their energy, put their careers on the line to help us get answers, and instead all they get is attacked as well. And we get attacked for asking, and that is not okay. That's not okay for Flint, and it's not okay for any kind of scientist or researcher to do in any other city, especially in a city that's traumatized as we are and that is fighting as hard as we are. So that is why I signed the letter.
One more thing about him. It seems to me that he filed a complaint against He filed a complaint against a Wayne State researcher. His name was Sean McElmurray. You know more about the complaint than I do, but he did it on behalf of the residents of Flint. Is he like now the attorney or registered scientist for the people of Flint? Because it seems like he's making declarations and things like that on behalf of you.
And that's the thing. You don't speak for other people. I'm not going to go speak for you. I'm not going to speak for you. I'm going to refer people to that. I would never file a complaint. And that's the thing. He filed the complaint against Dr. McElmurray, which seems to be a very personal vendetta against Dr. McElmurray, who is on Fat Chep along with Laura Sullivan. And on our behalf, on behalf of the citizens of Michigan, he filed it on our behalf. Didn't ask us first. Didn't ask if he could do this, saying, "Hey, this person's violating this," or whatever. And then actually, Dr. McElmurray came back and said, "None of these even accusations are true." But Dr. McElmurray did actually testify on behalf of the prosecution against Dr. Eden Wells and Dr. Nick Lyons. So all of a sudden this complaint gets filed, and now, even though, and you know this quite well, the accusations are not accurate or true, guess what happens when you look them up? It's going to damage your credibility. So then maybe the judge will think, oh, maybe this, lead witness here is a liar. And, maybe Dr. Edwards is onto something, and he's going to swoop in and protect the residents of Flint. And we're like, no. We want to hear from Dr. McElmurray. We want to hear what's happening to us, what we're being exposed to. And you're going to file a complaint to shut him up. But that's what happened to Scott Smith, too. He got run out of town. Yeah. And because he was personally attacked by this man. And it has to stop. Please don't speak on my behalf. One of my heroes, which is Dr. Yana Lambrini-Du, she talks about... A colleague of his, actually taught ethics at Virginia Tech. One of my favorite parts of her speak... Yeah, right. Just, it's probably open. One of my favorite things she says is how you empower a community is not swooping in and becoming the only hero, the only source. It's not to become a hero at all. It's to empower a community by handing off your power, giving your power to them, your knowledge, your experience, your support to this community, and standing behind them and lifting them up, not smashing the very people who lifted you up as a hero and smashing them down and standing up claiming that you're this big hero and you did this, and actually calling yourself a hero when you're standing on the backs of those residents that you are now basically attacking and spitting on and calling ridiculous, saying that we're dumb and dirty. We got sick because we didn't wash our hands. No, we got sick because we did shower, because we do wash our hands. We do. That's how I break out in rashes. Every time I travel to go talk to another city on how to stand up and fight for their clean, safe water they deserve, I come home and bust out in rashes when I shower. Not because I'm dumb and dirty and don't shower. It's because I shower in these chemicals, bacteria, byproducts, question mark things. And that is what is so infuriating, because then, of course, all the mainstream media and all the people are like, oh, but Dr. Edwards says you're dumb and dirty and you're not washing your hands, so maybe you should do that. Oh, thanks. Thanks a lot. Come take a shower at my house. Same thing. Invites open to my house. It's been for 2 years.
And just to button up Edwards, he just got $1.9 million from the EPA to do this kind of testing all over the country. I should say it's not him, it's Virginia Tech, but it's going, he's the lead researcher. So him and Virginia Tech could do the same type of testing that they did in Flint, in Milwaukee, and New Orleans, and all these places with lead problems, and frankly, more than lead that they're not looking for. We're on low battery, so I want to finish asking all three of you. So one thing that really burns me, and I know it burns my business partner, but fill-in camera person, because I don't have funding. So if you're interested, it's Patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. I'm not going out for, like, we had pizza dinner, but we're not doing like fancy dinners with your money. It's so we could like boost the resources. Roseanne Barr tweeted something racist, which I don't advocate. Great, her show got canceled. But to me, what's more important you got to do is dig. Well, I've been here for 4 or 5 days, and I've been here 10 times, and I'll give credit. The Young Turks funded the first. So I've been here. All I do is come for 2 days, and you'll know not everything is right here. But I see the corporate media, and frankly, there are independent media that are not covering this anymore. And when they do cover it, it's just that the EPA tells them or whatever. Is Flint still a crisis? Is the water safe? I mean, what should people know watching? Because by the way, it doesn't matter if you're from Flint. The chickens are coming to roost where you live, literally. You want to know what I do every morning? I Google water contamination and click news. You'll start seeing new places that they're having water contamination, whether it's lead, arsenic, porphyrotic acid. Military bases now are they've been putting out for decades, are leaking into the groundwater. You have land. Do you think the water's safe?
And a friend of the family, I guess you could call her, ask, is the water safe? Because that's what I thought. Now, she lives in Warren, Michigan, in the same state. And she believed that the crisis was over. And it's not. It's not until we can get actual solid. There's so much that has to be done that I can't even wrap my brain around it, because the water, they can say is fine all they want. However, I'm looking at pipes that haven't even been touched yet right now out this window that you can't see because it's turned this way. The infrastructure coming into the homes, the hot water heaters. It's a mess. It's definitely far from over.
Brittany.
Yes.
Just get over it.
I know. You know what? I want to flip you off right now. I want to give me a lecture on fake news. Yeah, no, but really.
I just want to tell you the comments are really, really. Stay strong, Flint. This is a crime.
No one's like, so you're telling me no one's like, bitch, just get over it. Like,
I just sat down, but.
Okay. No.
Because you'll hear it from me. You'll all get it.
Yeah, you'll get it. You don't want to fuck with her. Sorry. No, but really, it's not. I feel like at the 4-year anniversary, I feel like everything started back over again. It was just this. It's the same shit every day, but it's going nowhere.
Yes. Yeah. So for Flint, today is day 1,497 since we've had clean and safe water and counting. We will not have clean and safe water until every single piece of contaminated plumbing from the water treatment plant all the way up to every single tap in every single home, apartment, shack, and shanty is replaced. And then thorough testing done to make sure that all contaminants, not just lead, are gone. So anything that can harm a human being needs to be out of our water. There's no reason. There's no acceptable limit of lead. 0, 0, 0, 0. How about that math?
And Melissa, I just want to point out, just changing the lead service lines in the street
one piece
does not guarantee safety, because they're
No.
not changing your interior plumbing that was damaged.
No. And I want to add that weather actually has a lot to do with the changing of the lead levels, and something that we had talked about, Bernard's test, where he had almost 8,000 in February and then 12,000 almost in March, and then in April had 15. That's the opposite way it should go. Actually, as the weather gets warmer, the lead levels and other bacteria and everything should increase. So that's another thing that I thought was kind of funky there. So no, it is a clean straw from a damaged main, because they keep exploding and we have boil advisories, and the damaged pipes in the home that are exploding that nobody seems to care about. So, and the one thing I want to say is don't forget about Flint. Just because we're not in the news big and exciting because we're not doing racist tweets, I guess we should do that. Or kittens.
More,
kittens.
Presidential elections. 'Cause
Here.
after
Right.
that,
So if we can come up with a gimmick beside the fact that we're being allowed to die here, people are being left to die until we get a gimmick, or you get funding and you just stay here, except not with our water. Just stay outside of town. So it's better. This is going to happen to you. This is going to happen, not just you, Jordan, and Chen, but everybody. If this doesn't get fixed here with all of the attention that we did have, if this doesn't get fixed, this is going to happen to you. And if it's not already happening, if you use water, you're just like us. You are a potential victim. So you might want to step up, learn those laws, check into your testing, and reach out to us because we'll help you. I mean, we're getting our butts kicked and everything like that, but we don't stop fighting, and we're not going to stop fighting no matter who calls us names and, puts all sorts of stuff out there and apparently puts us in PowerPoints and our photos and calls us new names. You stupid woman, what do you know? It's so cute that you're doing science. Anyhow, that aside, we will help you because we're all in this together because we all use water. And water's the new gold, and except this gold can kill you. So, yeah.
and we're only like 70% water.
Right.
So,
Now we're
it's
like
not really,
70% metal.
Yeah, now we're
Right. Are we going to get struck by lightning?
We can go over, we need the truth. I'm going to speak from the heart. This is a nightmare. This is a nightmare. We live it day in. We live it day out. We watch family members, we watch loved ones lose their lives. This is not our imaginations. We have common sense. We have intelligence. We have been given lie after lie after lie. This is not a time to continue to just push this under a rug and watch more people struggle, lose their homes. But come on, people have lost their lives. It needs to end.
Story.
Thank you. I got a little sentimental there.
So one thing I'm going to ask is, I think it's really, whether it's me or anybody else, it really doesn't matter. You don't actually get change unless you apply a furnace up the asshole of politicians. It's the only way. You have to apply pressure under politicians. There's different ways to do that. Activism and also journalism. For me, I don't go and protest at marches. I'm a journalist. I give my opinion as a journalist because I don't believe in that bullshit that you can't be a journalist and have an opinion. My facts are my facts. Read my story. The facts are there. But we need actual journalism on the ground in these places. That's why I've come back here so many times. It's not because I like the water or some people have said, oh, you're just trying to get famous. If I wanted to get famous, I wouldn't be in Flint, trust me. So it's really important to have journalists on the ground here. I'm not an octopus. Some people have said, why don't you go to this place? I can't go to every single place. And I just also had back surgery, so I'm recovering from that. But the bottom line is this. You have to get out of this Trump media industrial complex. Trump is a major problem, not belittling it. But these problems were before Trump. Trump's not going to do anything, but it's not just a federal issue. It's a systemic EPA issue and a local issue, even going as far down to the Flint water treatment plant level. The problem is Michigan Department of Environmental Quality didn't put the proper corrosion chemicals in. But by the way, the truth is they did not need to go to the Flint River temporarily. They did it to try and switch to a privatized pipeline. Without getting into the whole story, the Detroit water and sewage system, which Flint got its water from for 50 years, had offered to cut their price by 50%. It's in an email. So this bullshit that this was to save money is bullshit. So here's the bottom line. If you have a few dollars, fund me so I could stay out here and keep coming back. And I'm not just talking about Flint. I got to get back to East Chicago. I got to get back to Wilmington, where they dumped all these cancer-causing chemicals into the Cape Fear River. Massachusetts has a massive problem right now nobody knows about. Rachel Maddow, she's got to take a break from her Cold War reenactment that she's doing nightly about the Russian trolls and, Vladimir's coming. Because bottom line, I don't give a shit if Trump tweets something or this and that, because you want to know something? If Trump loses in 2020 and they put in a Cory Booker, this is going to change is if you have journalists keeping it in the news And you don't have to live in Flint to do something. Call your local officials. Ask them, are you doing anything on Flint? By the way, the governor of Michigan perjured himself in front of Congress. There's been nothing said. He literally lied in front of Congress about when he first knew about the Legionella issue and all these things. So you could call your congressperson. You can see how can is there activism you could do around this country to help Flint. There are organizations in Flint that need more donations, and I could get you that information from Melissa. So the bottom line is this: I love it that you're pressing the share button and all that stuff, and I greatly appreciate it if you fund me. Patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports, $1 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever you could do. Do something, because this is not just a Flint issue. It's going to come to your community because there's water contamination everywhere. Thank you for watching. YouTube.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. Peace.